Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. It is now Tuesday, the 17th of October, 2023. On the update today, we'll talk about 94L down there. The shell game continues with the models, I think. But I believe we're at a solution where it does look like, unless we get fooled again, this will develop, and it could come close enough to the northeastern part of the Caribbean islands there to bring impacts. And we're going to need to look at Mexico again. We have a system out there that could become Norma, and we got to watch that because that could be a pretty strong hurricane, maybe near the Baja and somewhere in the Mazatlan vicinity in the next few days. So October continuing with a rather busy overall pattern. So let's get on with it. Show you what we've got. Start off at the National Hurricane Center. Always a good beginning point. Here is 94L, 70 and 80% respectively over the next 2 and 7 days. There is the formation potential area. And again, it is possible that we see some impacts to the islands, especially if this goes on the southern part of the envelope of potential track area. We'll look at that in some of the modeling in just a little while. Meantime, in the Eastern Pacific, 2 areas to watch now. This is EP 90, that's Eastern Pacific Invest Area 90, and that's going to go on to develop. And the reason the circle is so small is because it's imminent. Its development is imminent. This system, though, is still a few days away from developing, so the Pacific's probably going to get a couple of additional developments there. The N and O storms on their list of names, probably going to cross those off fairly soon. First, let's look in the Atlantic. There's 94L, definitely getting better organized, a large, slow-moving system. There's some dry air out there, some wind shear, and it does have a pretty large envelope of energy to try to consolidate. But it's well on its way to doing so, and the more latitude it can gain early and then hopefully miss the islands like something like that, that would be preferred, obviously, but we do need to keep an eye on any potential southern shifts in the overall envelope of guidance that could potentially bring it closer to the islands. A big trough will develop, has been basically over the east, and there is no way, I'm going to just say 100% sure, that this does not make it to the United States. And then there are actually other disturbances out here we need to watch in the coming days as the Atlantic continues to be very warm relative to average, and energy out there that could try to develop later. So the season's not done, not by a long shot. Here is East Pacific Invest Area 90, and this is our next system that we will watch. This one could really go on to become quite a strong hurricane, and we'll look at that in the guidance here in just a few minutes. The vorticity signature, haven't looked at this in some time. There's the energy there with 94L. There's EP 90, and you can see which one is closer to really getting going there. That would be 90 over here, 94L in the Atlantic Basin. Taking its time, but it is getting there. It's consolidating that energy down at the lower levels. This particular image is 850 millibars, so that's about 5,000 feet up, and it's definitely getting there overall. So again, you folks in the northeastern corner of the Caribbean here, watch this closely over the next few days just to be sure. Hopefully it will comfortably miss, as we say. And looking at the afternoon guidance, there are some of the models there that do bring it more south and west, and then another camp that are enough north and east that it would miss the islands with direct impacts. And if you look at sort of the consensus here, the TVCX right there, fairly close overall. And again, it would only take a little bit more of a delayed turn in the envelope for it to come across and get a little close, too close for comfort. And remember, come on, we got to know the impacts. Rain is an impact. So bringing very heavy rainfall to these areas, especially where you have mountains, that can lead to flooding. So you have to look at the whole picture and not just say, hey, if it's not a hurricane, I do not care. That's fine. You have every right to not care. But heavy rain can be as destructive as the winds of a very powerful hurricane. We should know this by now. Speaking of very powerful hurricanes, some of the modeling has lost its mind, as we say, and it makes it very intense, but a majority of the reliable guidance there, a little bit more easy to digest, I guess you could say, in terms of what should happen. And we could get a hurricane out of this for sure, The environment seems fairly favorable overall. Wouldn't surprise me if we do get a hurricane when all is said and done. Now, I like this dashboard. We show it every once in a while here. Let's look over in the East Pacific. This is the guidance for EP90, and some of the modeling takes it up and starts to try to monkey around with it offshore. The rest of the guidance there back up towards some of it, the Baja, the rest of it in the vicinity of Mazatlan and vicinity, or the region. And so we've got to watch this, because the intensity here, this is a little bit more believable. A very strong hurricane looks like it's in the making once 90 there, 90E, really gets going. Don't know why my other computer's making that noise, but whatever. Little distractions. So let's look at the GFS from the 12Z run. There is 94L, south of a nice stout ridge of high pressure. There's our troughing that seems to be ever present off the East Coast, and there's going to be more of it coming this weekend. So let's move this out through time. And again, it looks like, it's going to head towards the islands there, but then the high pressure relents just enough that it curves away. But this is the wide shot. Let's zoom in just a little bit and get a better perspective. That distance is still too close for comfort. I think we could all agree, and it wouldn't take much for this to be more south, and you could get those rain bands and maybe even some wind impacts, and it curves on out and becomes a hurricane in the model. We can look at the lower levels and kind of discern that. 973 on the pressure there from the GFS. Let's see it crank up, turns away. A compact system overall. It consolidates, becomes more compact. There's Bermuda right there, by the way, so should be comfortably away from Bermuda. By the way, the name on this, assuming it all goes as the modeling here suggests, the name will be Tammy. Speaking of modeling, I do want to show you the Canadian, because it is more south, takes a little longer to get going, and so it cuts much closer relative to the GFS, I would say, to the islands there, so that could bring some wind impacts, right? So we're going to have to watch this really closely over the coming days. That's what we do here, that's what you do, but an overall similar track to what we have with the GFS. Let's go back over to the vorticity signature, switch our domain area to the Eastern Pacific. Look what happens here with 94E, or 94. It's 90, Mark. 90E goes up, kisses the Baja there, and then makes a beeline close to Mazatlan, it looks like, at almost a week's time. So we got to watch that. And then our other system down here really doesn't do much overall. Back this up, and I can show you. Tries to develop, and then not much comes of it, right? So yeah, pretty active pattern overall in the Atlantic Basin, in the Eastern Pacific, with plenty to watch, plenty to track, maybe some impacts from the Atlantic System, 94 there, and I think it's almost a certainty, unless 90E is able to kind of mill around off the coast of the Baja and not ever make landfall. I think that one has the opportunity to create more problems than we're going to see with 94L, but we don't know. That's why we watch this stuff pretty much on a daily basis. All right, and with that, pretty short update, short and to the point. There you have it. You're all caught up. As always, thanks for tuning in from all of us at Hurricane Track. I'm Mark Sudduth. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.